Hello, I'm Tomas Estrada-Palma. This is the Hogwash Report. I'd like to talk to you about what used to be known as the business cycle. Now, this business cycle apparently happened every once in a while, every 5-10 years. No one understood it. It just happened. It was as if it was a weather phenomenon that blew in, a front, and then passed. And this business cycle, all throughout school and in all of the newspapers and in the television reports, never was the business cycle ever explained. You don't find information like that about the business cycle in normal media outlets and educational institutions. It's because they're all hogwash. See, the business cycle is them giving you the business. Because really all the business cycle is the manipulation of the supply of currency. That's what's happening in Egypt right now. I mean, these bankers knew this was going to be happening. They use these computers that we have now as giant tattletale machines. You get on there, you know it, you bitch and complain about what's on your mind. That's what people did in Egypt, all at once. And don't you know that the powers that be knew this thing was coming? And when I say the powers that be, I don't mean Mubarak. He's one of the underlings that does what he's told. I'm talking about the big boys. They knew it was going to happen. It was only a matter of time. This has happened many times before. Come on, think about it. Go back and look in history. I know you didn't have to do it when you were in school, especially if you're American. It wasn't necessary in order to get your advanced degrees to actually know history. But in history, this type of phenomenon has happened many times before. The reason is the supply of currency is increased dramatically and then cut dramatically. What this does, even though you don't see it happening physically, it reduces and increases the value of the money itself. So people in an economy, and the lower down the economic ladder you are, the less aware you are of this, have to reprice their goods and services and labor. And that's what we're going through now. We're going through a repricing. That's the business cycle. We're going through a repricing of everything. And that includes your labor. Now, how do you like that? Your labor is being repriced in this business cycle. But it's really a banker cycle. And these bankers cause these collapses every 100 years or so, I guess. You know, when's the last big one was in the 30s. And they always use economic disruptions as the reason for wacko schemes like the Federal Reserve Board and all the central banks around the government, because they're all the same. They're all a bunch of crooks. And I'm hopeful that the folks in Egypt are going to wise up to this scam and realize that once they get control of that internet again, away from the national government in Egypt, that's the important thing, amigos in Egypt. Get a hold of that internet switch and turn it back on. Because once you do that, the reality is you don't need much of a national government. It's a fact. We don't here in America either. We need a very limited national government. We don't need a uppity, busybody, illegal national government telling us what to do. Because at the end of the day, they're taking orders from those same bankers and doing what they're told. And one thing they're doing is getting ready to, you know, give the business to a bunch of Americans. The Egyptians may prevent that, actually, if they're successful. I would, however, suggest to my amigos in Egypt, I question you, do you really need another Pharaoh? Do you? Do you want another Pharaoh to decide for you how your neighborhood should be, wouldn't it be better to now, once you get the national government routed out of power, because that's what you have to do. You're doing the right thing there. You're absolutely doing the correct thing by trying to rout that government out of power. However, once you get them out and they're scaring you with, well, what are you going to do then? Who's going to run the country then? Amigos, you run the country. You're doing a fine job. I'm just so impressed with the Egyptian people, how they have seized the opportunity to mind their own security and provide for one another, help each other, especially during these hard times, and that's what you ought to do, because you realize that the national government in Egypt, as well as here in America and around the world pretty much, they're a gang of criminals. They turn into the thugs that they are openly and commit crimes to sow chaos. And in Egypt, let's face it, the gloves off. We see them doing it out in the open. You're not being cool anymore, funny and sneaky. We know you're causing problems if you're a member of the national government, in the police force, in the different ministries. You're not needed anymore. The Egyptian people apparently can handle their own affairs. I see a situation where, hopefully in Egypt, things could just decentralize overnight, and the Egyptians will be busy minding their own local affairs, generating wealth, which means growing things, mining things, making things, transacting with one another, using a real money system based on gold and silver, or look, whatever you want to use, as long as it's a real commodity. I would suggest go ahead and use it and trade back and forth, barter, whatever. And ask the army to please step back and thank you very much, but go ahead and defend the frontiers, because there's always, it's a warning. If you are successful doing this, man, the bankers are going to have a fit, and they're going to try to make your lives miserable in Egypt. I want you to know that. So you're going to have to fend for yourselves until the rest of the world catches up. But I do wish you luck. Take care of your food needs, your local security needs, your local water needs, and other local issues. And if you do that, the leaders will emerge in the local areas for any type of a higher level of government that you might need on a limited basis, for instance, to give a civilian control to the army, which, at least for the time being, there's going to be a disconnect between the army and the civilian population, except for the agreement that we're not going to hurt each other. So that's a good thing. Eventually they will go back and defend the frontiers, and Egyptians will run Egypt. You don't need a bunch of little pharaohs running your lives. That's just the way I see it. It's hogwash. Think about it. Run your own affairs. And then the leaders, it's a competition. The best neighborhoods with the strongest leaders who do the best job, those are the guys you want to look into nominating for a higher national leadership or provincial leadership position. Let them earn it. Don't give it away to these globalist stooges that they're going to send your way now to try to take over. Because like I say, they saw it coming, and they already have their replacement for Mubarak vetted out and ready to go. Best to not even have a national government right now. Concentrate on your local government and go from there. But in the meantime, this has been Tomas Estrada-Palma. You're listening to the Hogwash Report. Please, 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 don't believe the hogwash. Bye-bye.